Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast. A first for us here on the Fox Sports The Gambler airwaves on iHeartRadio. Catch us streaming there. Always, you know me from the Beef Up Front podcast with Sean Brace doing college football. Tonight, we introduce as college football is behind us now. We're kind of at the midway point of college basketball, maybe even a little past. We got a big football game coming up in about a week as well that we've been talking a little bit about, I think. But after that, it's full-fledged college football, or excuse me, college basketball until we get to March Madness. So Brace, let me hop on here, and we're going to start doing the weekly weekend preview that we do here on PickSwap Media. Transition over to Fox Sports The Gambler as well. But this is your host, Ryan Coyle. As always, I'm joined by Joe Kmetz, longtime friend, former college roommate. And every week here on Thursday night, we bring you the 10 best games to look forward to on the weekend in college basketball, Friday to Sunday. This week, we just got 10 Saturday games. And we give you our picks. We give you our thoughts, kind of some big picture opinions as well. But Joe, welcome to the airwaves. It's good to see you again. And how are we?
Coyle, I'm great as always. Thank you for having me on. I mean, feels good, stepping up in the world, you know what I mean? Going on to the radio waves, going on to Fox Sports Gambler. It feels good. I'm excited. I'm hoping that I have more of a 26-4 type performance rather than some other weeks like I had in college football this year.
Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, we go through the top 10 games of the weekend. I kind of just go through, pick those guys out. And then we use a site called Haslametrics just because DraftKings doesn't have the lines out yet for the games this weekend. But Haslametrics essentially is like a Ken Palm type thing where it gives you the analytical projections. I give you the score, and then we make our lines, our spread, and our over-under kind of based off that. If you look on Saturday when or Friday night, whenever the lines come out, they're usually pretty close within a point or two of each other. So pretty good basis of potential picks for you to use on the weekend. So we, as I said at the beginning, we usually do a couple Friday games, but this Saturday is just a really loaded slate. Your first Saturday, your first Sunday, your first, unless you count the Pro Bowl as football, but the first weekend of just like strictly basketball. Obviously we got the Super Bowl next week, but a great Saturday to, like, if you have no plans, you don't need to move from the couch. This is an awesome slate to get into. The SEC has been such a dominant conference, top to bottom. Anybody can win on any given night. And we have a big game in the SEC in Knoxville, Tennessee, as number 8 Tennessee at 17-4. They host number 5 Florida, 18-2. I know Florida's been up there all year, but to see them at 18-2 at this point in the season, pretty wild. There's a noon tip on ESPN. Haslam projects this one as a 68-67 win for Tennessee. So we'll set the line at Tennessee minus 1.5, over under 134.5. Joe, will the Vols bounce back after that loss to Kentucky at home the other night?
Yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee here, Coyle, 63-60. So I'm going to go with the Vols. I'll take a minus 1.5. I'm going to go with the under 134.5 here. I mean, this is a Tennessee team, Coyle, you and I have kind of talked about the SEC all season long of like, you're going to get a team that's going to be in the top 15 in the country, but might be like the 10 seed. SEC right now, or Tennessee right now is number 8 in the country, 9th in the SEC. So they'll be playing, I think they'll be playing on like the opening day, or maybe they'll just get a bye as the 9 seed, but they're right down there at 4-4 with Mississippi State, who we'll talk about later, who's currently 10th according to ESPN. But I mean, Tennessee, we saw Kentucky go in there and they were able to kind of not fall into like Tennessee style of play, which not many teams have been able to do. I think it's going to be very tough for Florida going into Tennessee. Tennessee is in a gotta have it spot, as weird as it sounds, not in terms of missing the tournament, but you'd rather not be sitting at 9 or 10 in the SEC just because come conference tournament time, you're gonna have to play all those extra games if you want to win a championship. So I think this is a big game for Tennessee. I think they get it done here. They upset Florida in terms of the rankings, but spread wise, I mean, it's pretty even. So I think Tennessee wins a close one, low scoring game.
Yeah, Thompson Bowling Arena is one of, if not the toughest places, I think, to play in the SEC. I was very surprised to see Kentucky go in there, and I like that Kentucky team a lot. I think it's a very good Kentucky team, but Tennessee just rarely loses in that building. So to see Kentucky go in there and win, you have to think Tennessee is going to be able to bounce back in this spot. As I said at the beginning, like Florida, hats off to them. They've had a great season sitting there at number 5 in the country, 18-2. I definitely think they can go in there and pull off the win, get the outright victory in this one. But I just think it's too hard for this Tennessee team to lose back-to-back. I talked about it the other day with Brace, but I definitely don't like this Tennessee team as much as I did last year. Their go-to guy this year is Chaz Lanier, who's a very good player, but I think Dalton Knecht was certainly at another level. I think this Tennessee team has a ceiling, probably a Sweet 16 at most. Sitting here at number 8 in the country, I just don't respect them as a Final Four or national title contender as of right now. But this weekend, I do like them to win. I think it's going to be very close. I'll take them to cover the 1.5 and go over 134.5. Give me Tennessee 70, Florida 68. All right, we stay in the SEC. It's going to be a popular theme. Three of our first 3 games are SEC games. 4 of our first 5. It's the best conference in the country for a reason, and they're plastered all over the top 25 here. But number 20, Mizzou at 16-4. I think one of the surprise teams in college basketball this year. This is a Missouri team that last season went winless in conference play. They traveled to number 14, Mississippi State, 16-4, who's had a down couple weeks after a really strong start to the season. 1 o'clock tip on SEC Network. Mississippi State, another really close projected game. Haslam has it at 75-74 Mississippi State. So go Mississippi State minus 1.5, over under 149.5.
I just think this is a tough spot for Mizzou. I'm going to go Mississippi State here, 81-77. So I'm going to take the Bulldogs minus 1.5. I'm going to go over 149.5. I think I said it last week. Sprinkled Mississippi State to win the Natty at 50-1 as kind of like a long shot team. They instantly lost back-to-back games. They're kind of leveling out a little bit here, but another team that's currently, I just mentioned it, 10th in the SEC right now, but they're in the top 25 in the country. This is a Missouri team. Coyle, you said it. They've been very surprising, coming off a big win against Ole Miss at home. It's just going to kind of be like when I'm picking these games, it's tough to go back to back with teams that are this good, but especially going on the road. And Mississippi State's coming off a really tough home loss to Bama. They're in a, gotta have it kind of spot. So I'm going to go with Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm going to take the home team with the Bulldogs here as well. I'll go 72-68, so I'll have them cover minus 1.5, under 149.5. As I said, they started out really strong, still sitting here at 14th in the country at 16-4. But you kind of touched on it, a 2-game losing streak, if that's what you want to call it, just last week. And Mizzou has been playing, I think, kind of with house money. At this point, you got to respect them. But this is a matchup of 2 teams that I don't think was expected much from coming into the year. Mississippi State, obviously a respectable touring team, but a team to be, competing for top 10 spots. I don't think that was expected. So that just goes to show you the depth of the SEC. Vandy's not on the list this week, but they kind of fit in that picture as well. But home court here, I feel like you got to take the home favorite in this spot. This is probably the closest game for me. I really could see this being a coin flip type of battle, but I will take Mississippi State and I'll have them cover that 1.5 at home. I do think this one comes down to the wire and probably a couple of free throws late to seal it. Give me Mississippi State minus 1.5 and the under of 149.5. All right, a big-time SEC game, the SEC game that I'm looking forward to the most of the ones that we've broken down so far and that we probably will break down for the rest of the show. Number 1, Auburn at 19-1, only loss coming this year at Duke, who's number 2 in the country. They'll travel to number 23, Ole Miss at 16-5. Ole Miss kind of fits in that Mississippi State category where they've had a rough past couple weeks, but in such a tough conference, somebody's got to lose, obviously, every night. 16-5 Ole Miss. This is a 2 o'clock tip on ESPN. Haslam projects a 77-69 win here by Auburn. So we'll go Auburn minus 7.5, over under set at 145.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Auburn here going on the road and getting this one done, 75-72. So I'll take Ole Miss plus 7.5. I think that's a lot of points if that does end up being the spread. I'm going to go I'm actually going to go over 145.5. I did that math wrong with my score. But I think this Auburn team, obviously they're number 1 in the country. I think it's them and Duke, and Bama as well. If you're talking about like, I got to trust one team on a neutral court. I know that's not exactly that hot of a take considering the fact that they're 19-1. They're ranked number 1 in the country for a reason. But when you have a guy in Janai Broome, he's just so much fun to watch. He's so good. And he's a guy that you can go to when you need a bucket. We saw that Tennessee game last weekend on Saturday. That was an awesome environment. Ole Miss is definitely going to be very rowdy. Don't get me wrong, tough place to go to and play. But I think Auburn's going to be able to get it done on the road. So I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers winning that game.
Yeah, were you able to watch any of that game last week against Tennessee? Or was that the night that you were at the casino?
No, I was really able to watch the game Saturday. We had it on at the bar, yeah.
Yeah, that was like that game just gave me, I know it was a war. I know it was a tough game between two top 10 teams, but like I came away from that game like a little bit more concerned about both of those teams. And we already kind of talked about Tennessee's limitations at time on the offensive end, but I think Auburn really struggled with that one too. That game was played in the 50s, and a war, two really athletic teams, defensive-minded teams, I think that match up well together. Sure, you might get a result like that, but I left that game kind of thinking like, could either of these teams lay an egg like this and potentially get ousted in the first round of the NCAA tournament? Like, it wouldn't surprise me. I've been very high on this Auburn team. As I said, that only loss is that loss at Duke at Cameron Indoor. Nobody ever really wins there. So not really, hurting them too much for that. But still, I think this Auburn team is beatable, and I think this is a spot that Ole Miss is not just going to cover the 7.5, but I have Ole Miss pulling off the outright upset. I love what Bruce Pearl has done with Auburn. He's brought that program to life. Obviously, they've never touched this before, at least in our lifetime, in this kind of mold of being a consistently top 5 team, sitting here at number 1 in the country when this game's going to be in February. Props to them, but I still take Chris Beard. You give me Chris Beard versus any other coach in the country, I'm most likely going to take Chris Beard. And just a straight up X's and O's, you got to win me one game. You give him a home court in this one, but if you put him on a neutral floor, like I'm probably going Chris Beard or Rick Pitino. Like I really think those are the two kind of coaches I would probably take to win me one game. I think he's going to have these guys ready to go. Obviously going to be a sold out crowd, going to be jumping down there. An Ole Miss team that's been on a little bit of a slide recently. They need to kind of get the momentum back, because this is an Ole Miss team that just beat Alabama a couple weeks ago, and then they've been struggling a little bit since. So I like them to right the ship this week, pull off the outright upset here over Auburn. I'm going to go Ole Miss 78, Auburn 72. So Ole Miss plus the 7.5 and over 145.5 for potentially upset of the weekend there. All right, we move off the SEC finally, and we head to the Big 12. Number 11, Kansas, 15-5, who, Joe, I believe is in your doghouse as well as mine. They traveled to Baylor, who's 13-7. Baylor having a bit of a down year for their standards, but I think anytime these two teams play in the Big 12, it turns out to be an awesome game. 4 o'clock tip on ESPN. Kansas projected to win here 70-68. So Kansas minus 2.5. We'll set it at over under 137.5.
Yeah, Coyle. I mean, you're definitely saying Baylor not that great compared to their usual standards. I got to see him play at UConn earlier in the year, and a game at the time where both teams were in. It felt like we're in much different places than they are now. UConn barely hanging in the top 25, and Baylor sitting here, 13-7. But I'm going to go with the Baylor Bears here to pull off the outright upset at home, 72-67. So I'll take them plus 2.5, and I'm going to go over 137.5. I mean, this is a Kansas team. Obviously, they're in my doghouse, so that might be clouding my judgment a little bit. But that's a loss against Houston that sticks with you. You had that game won so many times, and you still found a way to lose. You
And did you see
come
that
out
game against UCF, I believe, last night or 2 nights ago? They needed a down-to-the-wire win against UCF.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to get into. You just survive against UCF. Now you got to go to Baylor with a game on Monday. That's kind of why the Big 12 scheduling is very interesting. It's a lot of Saturday, Monday games. You have a game Monday night at home against Iowa State, who's number 3 in the country right now. It's a massive game for you. I think that kind of takes into effect, look ahead spot, Kansas looking to bounce back at home against Iowa State, kind of overlooking Baylor, a team that 3 or 4, was it 4 years ago they won the national championship? Yeah, it was the COVID year. So 2021, they won the national championship. So still a very good Baylor program. And Coyle, we have said it, when it comes to basketball, Kansas going on the road, Kentucky going on the road. It's always one of, if not the biggest games of the year. So I'm going to go with Baylor at home for that reason.
Yeah, you want to hear a wild stat I heard today? If Kansas would have lost that game to UCF the other night, that would have been the first time they lost back-to-back home games at Fog Allen since 1989. Just
so stupid.
I think it was to going into that game. Bill Self's been the coach at Kansas since 2003. That was the 4th time he's ever been a home dog, and they had the game won. That's what we're talking about. People were, I know some people were on the losing end of Iowa State on Monday night on the Caleb Love shot. I'd argue ours was even worse because of the lead that they had, and then they did it twice.
Yeah,
they did it twice, regulation and overtime. That was just a deflating performance. And I was talking about it yesterday. I was like, I think Kansas, obviously the logo, the name Kansas, they kind of ride the coattails of that a little bit. Like, I don't think it's that great of a team, but it goes back to, and the point proved to be dumb when it came to college football. But when you looked at Ohio State kind of throughout the year in college football, you were like, are they really that great of a team, or is it just a good roster? And obviously they turned it on, they figured it out. Who knows? Kansas could do the same thing. But I said this about Kansas, like, they had deep pockets. Obviously they went out, paid these guys. They had to pay to retain Hunter Dickinson. They went out and got AJ Storr, Zeke Mayo. It's a team full of transfers and high paid NIL guys. But is it really a good team, or is it just a collection of talent on a roster? Like, I don't see it with this Kansas team. AJ Storr was the number one transfer on the market, and he comes off the bench, and they had to throw him in the other night in overtime and double overtime just because other guys fouled out. Like, that's kind of the role that he's fallen to. So I really don't buy out this Kansas team. Hunter Dickinson's effort, very lackluster, I think you could say. Juwan Roberts basically was giving him the work anytime he wanted to, destroying him on the glass. Like, does he want to even be there? Is he just kind of collecting a paycheck? Baylor's had a down year. They fought a lot of injuries, but I think this Kansas team is a little too overhyped. I really don't think they're the 11th best team in the country. I'm gonna have another outright home upset here with Baylor going up 78-70. So Baylor plus 2.5 over 137.5. And I feel like just Kansas is a team that I'm gonna look to fade it in these type of spots going forward. All right, Joe, we get off the SEC for one game, and now we're right back to it. Georgia, 15-6, who started out really hot, owns a win over Kentucky. They've hit a bit of a lull. I think they're 3-5 now in the SEC. They traveled to number 4 Alabama, who's 18-3, who, if you made me pick a national champion today, I think I'm taking them. I think when they've been at their peak and at their best, they've been the best team in the country. So 4 o'clock tip on ESPN2. This is just such a football matchup. But a projected win on Haslam, 82-73. So we'll set it at Bama minus 8.5, over under 154.5.
Yeah, I'm going with Bama on the over here. This is kind of a chalky, square pick, but I think Bama's going to smash Georgia. And they're kind of like the Bama teams, the last couple of years under Nate Oates. When they're going offensively, they are almost unstoppable. And it's just a matter of when they get to the tournament, if they're off for a game, are they going to be able to supplement that with their defense? That's, obviously remains to be seen. Depends on how the bracket will break out. But I think Alabama is going to just smoke Georgia here. A team who I thought was going to be able to right the ship. They haven't really been able to turn that around. Definitely a got-to-have-it spot for them. Just really tough to go into Alabama and get a win. So I'm going to go with Bama here. Not a lot of real in-depth analysis with this one, just taking the better team.
Yeah, my advice when it comes to betting on this Alabama team and this, whenever Nate Oates is the coach, like, you don't have to bet on them, but don't bet against them, because this could be a game where if the spread is at it's 8.5 as we have on the projected, if that's the actual number, like, Georgia could be within 2 to 3 the whole game. Bama doesn't take their foot off the gas. Like, they're not looking to pull it out. They just go. They'll go down, shoot threes till the clock runs out. Like, they could be down. They could be up by 2 points with a minute to go, and they could win that game by 12. Like, not surprising in the least. So I would just say don't bet against Alabama, because they never take their foot off the gas. Obviously, you can bet on them. But if you're looking to, if you don't like them to cover a spread in a game, just stay away. Just don't bet against this Alabama team just because of the style of play. I think this is a waxing, though, as well. Not quite the same level as you, but I am out on this Georgia team. I've watched them a few times. I bought in a little bit to that hot start, but they've definitely been a different team away from home. I think Alabama takes care of business by double digits. Give me 90-77. So Bama minus 8.5. Love the over of 154.5 if that's the actual number there. All right, Joe, I want to get your thoughts on this team, because I think for sure, ever since at least I've known you, like, Michigan State has just been so overrated just because of the Izzo effect. Like, their teams haven't been that great. Their rosters haven't been that great. I think it was the COVID year where the tournament got canceled. They were actually going to be like a 1 seed. So outside of that year, I think they've been, underachieving, kind of mediocre. Sure, they have some of that tournament magic in them sometimes, but they've been underperforming, I think, for their standards. And they're sitting here at number 7 in the country at 18-2, looking like the best Izzo squad that I've seen in at least the last 4 to 5 years. They travel to USC, who's 12-8 in their first year in the Big Ten, first year with Musselman. Potential upset spot here, I think. 4:30 tip on Peacock. Michigan State projected to win 76-71, so go minus 5.5 for Sparty, over under 146.5.
Yeah, Coyle. You kind of said it best. They have been almost like treading water these past couple of years. Our freshman year of college, that when we knew each other, that was the year they beat Zion and that Duke squad. The year after that, COVID year, they were pretty good. But then since then, they've been hovering around like the first four to like a 9 seed kind of range, lower part of the bracket, like towards that cut line. This year they're really good. They're 18-2, But if you look at who they beat in Big Ten play, their best win is at Ohio State. After that, they've beaten Minnesota twice, who's third to last. They beat Washington, who's last. Nebraska, who's second to last. Northwestern, who's fourth to last. Penn State and Rutgers, who are fifth and sixth to last. What?
Did they beat? Didn't they beat Illinois at home?
They do have an Illinois win at home. I was just arguing, like in terms of going on the road. I think you could argue Ohio State on the road better win. Illinois is after that they have a lot of wins against the bottom of the Big Ten. And because of that, going out west, I'm actually picking USC to win this game. I'm going to go 79-75 to the Trojans, so I'll take them to cover that 5.5. I'm going to go with the over here. This just kind of feels like, we've talked about it with football a little bit. These teams going across the country with all of this travel. I mean, I know, Michigan State was able to just come home against Minnesota, but last week they were, playing in Jersey. Then they go back home, they play Minnesota. Now they go out to USC. I think USC is not as bad as their record shows. I know, 12-8, 4-5 in the Big Ten isn't great, but I'm going to go with USC to pull off the upset here. I feel like Sparty is due for a loss, and this will be one of those games, you'll be in the mix, of you said, that's going to be a crazy Saturday of games. This might be one of them. If you don't have it on because it's on Peacock, you'll get the alert on your phone with the head exploding emojis and the Trojan sword, and USC just pulled off the upset. So this is going to be one I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think USC is a team that we see here at 12-8 right now. I think they're a team that I know we only got about, it's pretty crazy, only like 9 to 10 regular season games left. But I think they're a team that's going to finish strong. And I'm not going to say put themselves in position to make the tournament, but maybe be one of those top NIT seeds or be a team that makes a real run in the Big Ten tournament, like surprises. And they're one of those teams that looks to be a bid stealer at the end. Musselman is just such a great coach. And, it's been definitely a bit of adjustment, in their first year in the Big Ten. But I'm not ruling them out to pull this one off. But go back to the big picture Michigan State talk real quick. You look over the past few years. Last year, 20-15, a 9 seed. The year before, a 7 seed, 21-13. The year before that, 23-13, a 7 seed. The year before that was the COVID year, so that was a bit of a weird one. They went 15-13 and still made the tournament. They were a first four. Was that when they played UCLA, right? And then UCLA beat them.
And then I remember at halftime, I think that was the year Izzo and one of his players were just screaming at each other. And he was losing his mind, and people were like, "This is, never mind." I'm gonna stop myself.
15-13 though, when they made the tournament. I know that was a funky year, but still, that's wild. But yeah, I mean, the last time that they were a top 3 seed was 2018, 2019, when they went 13-7, were a 2 seed. Like I think the program's definitely been on a downward trajectory in recent years. But this is the best that they've looked. I will take them to win, but I am going to have USC to cover. USC, I've watched them a handful of times. When they're playing well, they can be really good. And like you said, Michigan State might just be due for a loss, traveling across the country here as well. A tough kind of spot, but I am going to take them to win. But I do like the Trojans to cover the 5.5. Give me Michigan State 73, USC 70, so USC plus 5.5, under 146.5. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 matchups left. We got a Big 12, we got an ACC, we got a Big East, and we got an SEC. So a little bit of everything to finish off our first episode here. Number 22, Texas Tech at 16-4 travels to number 6, Houston, who is 17-3. Very impressed with Houston, especially coming out of Kansas the other night with that win. 6 o'clock tip on ESPN2. Houston projected to win by double digits, 70-57. So Houston minus 12.5, over under 126.5.
Yeah, cool. I mean, you said it best. Shout out Houston. You go to Kansas, get that win at Fog Allen, and then you go to West Virginia, who, West Virginia might not be the greatest team, but going to Morgantown, those fans are just so invested and they care so much about West Virginia sports. I mean, that is really impressive to get those back to back. Now you come home and you get a Texas Tech team that's, also kind of back on the rise, having a very sneaky, good year for.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there hasn't really been a lot of buzz about Texas Tech at 16-4 right now. That's why, kind of out of respect to this Texas Tech team, I'm going to go Houston 63, Texas Tech 61. I think they'll keep it close. If 12.5 is the number, that I love that, even though, you're not going to get rich, I feel like betting against Houston at home.
Hmm.
I'm going to go under 126. Houston, they just suffocate you. They kind of remind me of a little bit better offensively, don't get me wrong, but of that Virginia team that won the title in 2019. They're just so good defensively, and they can just lock you up for, an entire stretch, like a 5-10 minute stretch. And they're just like, it's so like it's refreshing in a way to watch. Like, you have all these teams. Like, I love the offense, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of fun sometimes to see a rock fight, and there's like a pure fist fight going on in the corner, and it's just Houston playing, against a team, just suffocating them and winning a game. So I'm going to go with Houston here, 63-61 in a close game and keep it tight.
Yeah, I think you said it best with kind of just the straitjacket they put teams in, the stranglehold that they can put teams in on the defensive end of the floor. I feel like they are the team most to when you're watching, where whoever their opponent plays, just say in this game, Texas Tech, it'll be like Texas Tech, no field goals in the last 6 minutes and 7 seconds. Houston has that ability, and Houston's that team that like will force the coach to call a timeout. I'm having flashbacks from playing basketball, but when you played against a really good defensive team and the coach calls a timeout, and like, guys, what the hell are we doing? Like, we're not running any plays, and it's just like they're literally just ruining every play, wrecking every play, and you can't run anything, and you're kind of just going one-on-one. That's what they kind of force teams into at some point. I was just so impressed with their toughness and their resilience that other night at Kansas. That was the first time, but the first time I dove in and watched a Houston game from start to finish. Obviously, I've tuned into them throughout the year, but that was just such a tough game and just such a Kelvin Sampson thing. That team, you could go the last 4 to 5 years, they're going to be the same team, the same identity. They don't have Jamal Shedd anymore, but Emmanuel Sharp's a hell of a player. Juwan Roberts a hell of a player. This is a big number. It's a bet that I think Texas Tech certainly could keep it within, but as I just said, like, Houston can make those teams go in those dry spells and just not allow them to score at all. So this is just going to be a stay away for me. For the sake of making a pick, I'll go 70-62, Texas Tech plus 12.5, over 126.5. But I think this is one that Houston wins, and just I'd say tune into this team because I really think that they're good enough to win it all. And I haven't said that the past few years, but I do think this Houston team has the pieces to do that. All right, Joe, interested to hear what you say about this, but my opinion, the best rivalry in college sports. I think a lot of people say Michigan, Ohio State, but I think this is the best just because of how back and forth this series always is. Like, it is very, very rare if you don't get these two teams to split. And also was like shocked when I was making the list of the games of the week. I was like, holy crap, it's already UNC Duke round one. Like, it's amazing how quick the season's flying by. I mean, it'll be February 1st, and I was talking to you today, we're looking to book our Atlantic City March Madness trip already. Like, pretty wild how far we're into the season. But UNC, if you're just getting into college basketball now, struggling, 13-9. They'll travel to Cameron Indoor to play number 2 Duke at 18-2. 6:30 tip on ESPN. Duke projected to roll in this one, 79-65. So Duke minus 13.5, over under 143.5. That would be the biggest Duke spread against UNC in my memory. I'm not sure about you, but any chance UNC can pull off the upset in this one?
I don't think so, just because the fact that this game is at Cameron Indoor. I'm going to go Duke 81, UNC 74. I'll take the Tar Heels plus a 13.5. I'm going to go with the over 143 here. This is just like North Carolina, it's depressing to watch because they're such a good brand. And, this happens, whenever you get like a big brand and they start playing poorly. Like, North Carolina is a team in my mind that should like always be in the top 25. And I know, in recent years, they haven't been that consistent. They've been very up and down, very erratic, but I really hope this UNC team turns it around in the future because I really don't want to see this rivalry start to kind of fade down a little bit. Because, Coyle, I'm with you. If it's not number one, it's definitely in the top three for not just college sports. I would argue all of sports.
Yeah.
So I really hope that UNC can keep this one close, which I think they'll definitely keep it within that number. But if they lose this game and they miss a tournament again, got to start having talks about Hubert Davis. I don't want to say that he should be fired or anything, but they're one of the weirdest runs I think we've ever seen. They were the 8 seed. They went all the way to the title game. Then they missed the tournament the next year. Like I don't really know what to make of
The
them,
first
but
team ever to be the preseason #1 and miss it.
yeah, I mean it's crazy. Kind of the Hubert Davis experience right now at UNC. The beauty of them being North Carolina is that even if they lose this game, they'll be 13-10. But if they win enough games to end the season, they'll probably still find a way to sneak in. Because I even saw like their net ranking at 13-9. They're a higher net ranking than Memphis, who's currently 19th in the country. They have a game tonight, Memphis, but UNC will still be sniffing around even if they lose another couple games. But I think Duke's going to get this one at home. Cooper Flag is awesome. I really wish I was like rich. I would have given them $10 million to go to UConn instead of go down to Duke. But I think Duke wins this one.
Yeah, and the point as well with UNC, it's like this ACC is super weak. Like there's still going to be chances to stack wins. How quality of wins are they remains to be seen, but there also could be a path where they could run through the ACC tournament because surely a talented enough team, especially at the guard spot. But the major talk about this team, and historically, at least UNC's had good bigs for so long. They've been great in the post, and this team has really struggled there. That's kind of been their fatal flaw. 13.5. If you're going to give me that in this Duke UNC game, I'll take that any day of the week. With the dog there with UNC. It kind of reminds me of like Steelers Ravens. It's like I know the past couple times the Ravens have beat up on them, but for our entire life, those games have came down to the last second, 3-point games or whatever. I expect this one to come down to the wire as well. UNC, if they're going to get up for anything in this, what we're calling a down season, it's going to be this game. I will have Duke escape with the win, 73-71, but I love UNC plus 13.5. I doubt that's the actual number. I think that could probably be like 9.5 or something. Kind of reminds me of last week, Joe, with Wake Forest and Duke. I think that projected number was 13.5, and I think it closed at like 10.5. But give me UNC plus a 13.5 over 143.5. All right, 2 games left, Joe. We're getting to your UConn Huskies here. Number 25, they are 15-6. They'll travel to number 9 Marquette, first place in the Big East, 8 o'clock on Fox. UConn, I saw, even with this 25 next to their name, like if you look at all the rankings, like Haslam, like we're talking about, Ken Palm, Torvik, none of them have UConn, I believe, even in the top 30. So I'm getting a little much respect, I think, still from the voters. But Marquette projected to win this one 74-67 here at home. Marquette minus 6.5, over under 140.5. And just before you get into your pick, I remember last year, it was probably this Saturday, but last year was at UConn first when UConn hosted Marquette and they rolled them. And that's when everyone was like, this team's doing it. This team's going back to back. And now to see him here, probably still feeling pretty safe to make the tournament, but a loss here, they go to 15-7. Tensions are seeming to ride a little high. You could touch on that a little bit more, but do you think that they have a chance to pull off the upset in this game?
Not even a little bit. I think this game could get ugly tomorrow or Saturday night, excuse me. I'm going Marquette 75, UConn 62. I'm going to go Marquette minus 6.5. I'm going to go under 140.5 here. Ever since McNeely's been hurt for UConn, they're a completely different team. I was at the game against Butler. They needed overtime to survive, that game. It felt like they, like when you're playing a video game and like your controller dies. That's what it felt like with Butler coming back and almost winning that game. Then UConn, loses at Xavier. And then against DePaul last night, I was not at that game, but, they're getting booed at home, which some of the UConn fans acting like there was a crime committed because the UConn players got booed. They're some of the best basketball players on the planet. If you were playing in a high D1 school, obviously there's the NBA, but then it's you guys. Like, they're going to be just fine. They've been playing competitive basketball for years. I'm sorry, you should not be struggling against DePaul. UConn is 7-3 in the conference. They're 15-6. I get it. They're going to make the tournament, but the people that were reacting to the booing, that were like offended personally, they're like, you don't boo the back-to-back national champs. They're not playing like back-to-back national champions right now. It's okay that you booed them for playing poorly against DePaul. They're all going to be fine, and I feel like Hurley's going to fire them up next time they're at home. I don't care who they play. I'm going to be texting you, Coyle, to hammer the spread. But just going on the road to Marquette, different story. I feel like they're going to get punched in the face. I would not, if I was Hurley, I've seen reports of McNeely, is kind of ramping up, getting ready to go. I wouldn't play him in this game on the road. I would wait because I feel like even with McNeely, this will be a tough game to win. I know that might be coward talk or whatever, but there's no point in rushing him back for a game you might not even win with him. Save him up, get him a little bit healthier for a potential tournament run again. So I think Marquette kills UConn in this game. I think this might be the year. We always make fun of Luke, who's one of our friends. He always will pick Marquette to go way deeper than you should in March Madness, but I think this might be the year Marquette can surprise a lot of people. I think the fact that they still have Cam Jones there for him, is awesome. He's so much fun to watch. I really hate that he plays for Marquette because I would love to root for Marquette, but you know, being in the Big East and being one of our rivals, I just can't bring myself to do it. But I think they smoke us on Saturday.
Yeah, I think the game could very well come down to the guard matchup there between Cam Jones and Solo Ball. We talked about it on last week's show, but when Solo Ball is playing well, this UConn team plays well. I think it's kind of as simple as that. Caravan as well. But my main gripe with this UConn team, they just don't really have that alpha type of guy that they've had in the past, that leader, that difference kind of maker, I think. And it's still like, dude, you just went two of the most dominant NCAA tournament runs ever, back-to-back champions. Like, you're still sitting here at 15-6. You're probably going to make the tournament. And I bet you if you make the tournament and you're like a 7 seed to a 10 seed, somewhere in that range, no one is doing jumping jacks and backflips and cartwheels if they see UConn pop up on their side of their bracket. Like, no one's still going to want to play them. Do they have any tournament success this year? I don't know what you would deem that. A win or two probably at this rate. But still, it's UConn. They still have a bright future. I don't think you're pressing the panic button at all in this program. But I do like Marquette to win. I think not going to be as big of a statement win as the win I talked about last year where UConn rolled them and everyone was like, all right, this is the national title team. I remember Brace even, he texted me like right after. He's like, UConn national title ticket has been placed. And obviously 2 months later, that looks good. That cashes. But Marquette in the spot, I think that they make a bit of a statement here that, the Big East, it's ours this year. It's ours in St. John's. You're going to have to take a back seat. They win this game and they cover it in the overhits. I'll go Marquette 80-70. So Marquette -6.5, over 140.5. And our last game of the night, we got a couple minutes to hit on it. The return of Coach Cal for the first time as the Arkansas coach traveling to Kentucky. I'm sure this first year at Arkansas isn't going as he planned. But Arkansas at 12-8 travels to number 12 Kentucky at 15-5. 9 o'clock tip on ESPN has them projecting a 10-point Kentucky victory here, 83-73. So I said it at Kentucky -10.5, over under 156.5. Joe, quick 30-second hit. Arkansas or Kentucky in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kentucky here. I'm going to take them to cover the 10.5. I'm going to go over 92-79. This is just one of those games. Those fans are going to be riled up. They're going to be booing Cal, all that stuff. But real quick, I just want to touch on this. The people that are saying that like the game is past Cal by and all that stuff, give them another year. It'll be all right. I saw some quote was like, I don't get fearful when I look at Calipari on the Arkansas sideline. It's like, give them a year. They're going to be all right. That's my last take, but I think Kentucky's going to smoke them.
I'm going to go upset of the weekend here. Going off the wall. Let's make a bold claim, a bold statement on our first show. I'm going to take Arkansas to go 2-up and get a win. I think if he has like his finger on the pulse of this program, like if these guys really love him, want to play for him, they're winning him this game because Kentucky kind of ran him out of town there. I know it was kind of like a bad divorce there at the end. It was just best for both sides to separate. But I think this is just a game Arkansas is going to get up for. 12-8. Traveling to Kentucky. It's been a down year, a disappointment of the year. If you win this game, though, there's still obviously plenty of opportunities here in the SEC to go get some big-time wins. So I think Arkansas is going to win this one, maybe flip their season and go on a bit of a run. If not, this is just kind of their Super Bowl because Kentucky doesn't travel back to Arkansas. This is the only matchup between these two teams, unless obviously they met up in the SEC tournament or potentially NCAA tournament. But give me Arkansas upset of the weekend, 82-80. Arkansas +10.5, over 156.5 there. But that'll do it for our first episode here. The college basketball beef up front weekend preview on Fox Sports, The Gambler. Next week's show to be decided. I know we have a lot of Eagles Super Bowl programming coming up at night next week, so we'll see what the kind of status of that is. Obviously, that that game means a little bit more in this city than some of these potential college basketball matchups. But Joe, any last second comments before we head out and revisit the slate next week?
No, I mean, enjoy the weekend. Listen, college hoops wise, this is one of the best weekends of the year just because it fills that void. This is the first, weekend of no football since August. Like this fills that void, and it's going to be a great weekend of college hoops. This is the weekend a lot of people start paying attention again. Obviously, I know bigger things in Philadelphia coming up the following weekend, but great weekend of college hoops to sit down and lock in. And it's going to be an awesome weekend of basketball to get you ready for Super Bowl week.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe. If you're listening on the iHeartRadio app, Daily Ticket, 3 to 6 with Sean Brace. Monday through Friday, you can hear all the rest of our programming as well at foxphlgambler.com. Enjoy the hoops this weekend. Hopefully a couple beers, a couple winning bets, and then we will be back talking to you next week.